Genesis chapter 19. And last week we got through half of the chapter, and this week we're going to finish it and head on into chapter 20. Bob was in Calgary last week, and he had to point out that Glenn went through 2 chapters in 1 week. So I'm going to go through a chapter and a half to show I can do it. So I hope you guys ate a big breakfast. So anyways. Oh, no, he said he finished 2 chapters and finished early, is what you said, right? Yeah. Yeah, so I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. I can do that. Church now ends at 3. And I'll always be early. So last week we looked at Lot and his family in Sodom. We saw the sad story of Lot and how he was following, although he followed after the Lord, he allowed too much of the world's influence into his life. I think for some of us, when we read the story a lot, we have a hard time believing that he was a righteous man because of everything that went on around him. But the Bible says he was a righteous man. In the New Testament, it says he was a righteous man. And so we have to believe that somewhere in his heart, he was still seeking after the Lord. But he wasn't passing it on to those around him. He was dabbling too much, had too much of the world's influence in his life, and it had a disastrous effect upon his family. And that's an important thing for us to always remember. It's something they teach pastors. Never assume other people know something. You could say, how many of you guys have been to a church where pastor says, that story in 2 Chronicles chapter 3, and we know that story. And then they continue on and you go, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's exactly it. Sometimes we can do that in our own walk. We can think, why? They already know. I don't need to teach them that because I know it. But they don't. They may not have learned it. They may not have gone through the experiences that you've experienced. And so for Lot, he brought too much into the world, too much of the world into his life, and it had a disastrous effect upon his family. We saw the sinful pride and depravity of Sodom, how they did not hide their sin, but imposed it upon everyone around them without any care or concern for those around them. And we saw Lot, how he lost his family, his wife, and all he's got left is his 2 daughters. And we ended last week at the end of chapter, or the last few verses there, 27, 28, and 29. It says, and Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. Abraham went early in the morning. And we're going to see this as Abraham learns and as he grows, this becomes a practice. He goes early in the morning before the Lord. It's always important for us to make that a practice, to go early in the morning before the Lord. Before we start our day, the first one we should go to is before the Lord. And that's hard to do because we get into habits and routines. We sit down, we flick the computer on, we check the weather, we check things, we check the scores, whatever it might be. We go and we get a habit of doing these things, and we need to say, the first person I'm going to go to is the Lord. And I know I do the same thing. I get busy doing stuff, getting things going, and I forget, and I get busy. And we need to keep it as a habit. We have to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it first thing in the morning. And it says here in verse 28, then he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land, the land of the plain, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land, which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the city in which Lot had dwelt. The Lord saved Lot because he remembered Abraham. Our faith, our walk can have a saving effect on those around us. It won't save you unless you give your heart personally to the Lord, but it will have a saving and a protecting effect upon your life. It's amazing how the Lord will protect those around us. And I've actually had people treat me like a lucky rabbit's foot. They kind of act like if I talk to Pastor Steve so many times, a week or a year or a month, it's kind of like lucky. And I had this gentleman that we knew, and he didn't come to our church, but he would call me and he would say, "You're my pastor." And I'm like, "Well, you don't even come to my church." And so every now and then he would just give me a phone call and chat for a bit. And he says, "Well, it's really nice to talk to my pastor." And I knew that he wasn't walking right. And I realized after the third or fourth phone call that he was using me like a lucky rabbit's foot. It's like if I call the pastor and I get, spend some time talking to him, I'm good. And partly it was because he came from a Catholic background. And it was he wasn't necessarily doing, but it was like he was doing confession. It's like, well, if I go in and I get my little thing done, I'm good, I'm covered for the week, right? And I can go back to my life. Well, the people around us sometimes will treat us like that. And so we have to be careful. Not necessarily be careful, but we can use that as an opportunity to share. But it's true that when people are around us, there is a saving effect. And so for Lot here, because Abraham walked before the Lord, the Lord remembered Lot and his daughters and his wife, and he got them out of the city. So the Lord takes Lot and his wife and his 2 daughters out of the city. His wife, she can't let go of the world, and she lags back, or she looks longingly back, and she gets caught up in the destruction. And now we find Lot here is alone. He's alone with only his 2 daughters. And he looks, and the angel says, hey, I want you to go to this city, or I want you to go to the mountains. He goes, I'm not going to the mountains. I just need to go to this little city. And we kind of ended there last week. I just want to go to that little city. I just want to keep a little bit of the world. I just want to keep it in my back pocket. I don't trust God enough to go to the mountains, because what did he say? If I go to the mountains, I'll be destroyed. So send me to the city. So the Lord says, okay, fine, go to the city. So he goes to the little city. And it says in verse 30 here, as we get started here, it says, then Lot went up out of Zoar and dwelt in the mountains. I think that's interesting. He says, oh, please, if I go to the mountains, I'll be destroyed. Let me go to this little city and I'll be safe, because in city, I like the world. It makes me comfortable. And he goes there and he gets up and he sees the destruction. He gets up in the morning, sees the smoke billowing, and goes, okay, kids, let's go. I don't want to be in a city, because now I see what happened to that city. We need to get out of here. And he takes his girls and he heads off into the mountain, because it says here, and Lot went up from Zoar and dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar. He was afraid to be there. He was afraid because he's like, well, maybe this town's next. I got to get out of here. So maybe Lot's learning a little bit. And he had his 2 daughters with him, and they dwelt in a cave. So then it goes on, it says, now the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is no man on the earth to come into us, and as is the custom of all the earth. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. So we start this section, and this is one of those sections in the Bible where you kind of read it through and you just go, ugh. You feel like, you need to go wash afterwards. It's an icky story. And one of the first things I'm just going to point out before we continue reading it is that they ran for the hills. They went to the city of Zoar, then they ran for the mountains. And they're living in a cave. And they have wine with them. It's like, of all the things you'd bring with you, it's like, well, we got to bring wine. Well, they bring wine with them. And it says here in verse 33, so they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in and lay with her father, and he did not know when she lay down or when she rose, so he was pretty drunk. And it happened on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, indeed, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and go in and lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Then they made their father drink wine that night also, and the younger arose and lay with him, and he did not know when she lay down or when she rose. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. This is one of those passages, again, that kind of makes you it's creepy. It's kind of like, ugh. But it shows the depravity of what is going on here. These girls, you think these girls are, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? They think that there's no men left on the earth, and we need to continue on the lineage of our father, so we'll sleep with him. So we'll have sex with our dad. That's just gross. That's just gross. Where would these girls get this idea? Where would they get it? How could they even think about it? I'm sure Lot didn't teach them this. He must have been horrified when he realized what his daughters had done. I think maybe that's one of the reasons why we don't hear from Lot again. He kind of just stayed in the cave. He probably didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. Where would they learn such depravity? Not from Lot, but from Sodom. Lot allowed his daughters to be steeped in the depravity of the world. His desire to please the world, his desire to be a part of the world, caused disastrous effects upon his daughters that he would never have realized. It may not have affected his faith, but it sure did theirs. It sure did theirs, because you notice that their first response isn't to go to the Lord. Their first response isn't to pray, Lord, what are you going to do? How are we going to do this? Their first response is, let's come up with some depraved, disgusting way of doing this. It's quite disgusting. Lot grew up walking with Abraham, being with Abraham, who went to the altar every morning, who went and spent time with the Lord, and he learned those things, but he didn't pass it on to his daughters. He didn't pass it on, and that's what I'm talking about. It's important for us to pass it on. It's important for us to show our kids and our grandkids how to pray, how to spend time in the Bible, how to spend time learning. It's important for us to learn it, or to teach it to those around us. Lot didn't continue going to the altar, and he started staying home. He started sleeping in, only making it to church when it was convenient, and his faith got weaker. It got weaker. I've heard so many people saying, I don't need church anymore. I get it on the internet, and I get this or I get that. And I say, you know what? You're missing a huge part. There's so much that we get just getting together, being with one another, learning from a real person who actually cares about you and is desiring to teach the Word of God is so important. Some guy on a screen doesn't know who you are or your troubles or your cares and doesn't care about you. We need to be those who are in church and spending time with the Lord and continuing to do it. Lot kind of was like, well, I'm good, I'm safe, I can just sit back and relax. I got my fire insurance in my back pocket, I'm good. Well, look what happened to his family. Complete destruction. So instead of going to the Lord like their father should have told or taught them, they go to the depraved things that they learned from the world. Verse 37, as it continues on, it says, the firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. And the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the people of Ammon to this day. This is the last we hear about Lot and his girls, but it's not the last we hear about his family. The descendants of Lot go on to be enemies of Israel, who continue to attack and continue to come against the Israelites for generations to come. Don't make the mistake of thinking you're strong enough in your faith to let a little of the world in. And you know what? This happens. A lot of the time it happens when we get older in our faith. We start thinking, well, I've done my duty, now I can start slacking off a bit because I'm pretty strong and I know I have the grace of God, so I'm good. And we start letting things slide that we used to hold on to very tightly. We have to remember to continue to stand fast, continue to be strong, because as we let a little bit of the world in, we begin to cool a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. How many of us know those who are on fire for the Lord and now they don't even go to church? The thought of going to church is like laughable. They're not even following the Lord anymore. Because they started just a little compromise, a little bit of the world, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And next thing you know, you wouldn't even know that they ever went to church anymore. Or if they ever had any faith in the Lord. It's important that we remember this. Because the devil loves to whisper this in our ear. Hey, you can just have a little bit. You don't want to be square. You don't want to be a nerd. You don't want to be one of those Bible thumpers. Come on. You know, I've had people say that, oh, so you're a pastor, eh? It's like, yeah. So you're one of those Bible thumper pastors? And I go, well, if you mean, am I going to hit you with my Bible? No. Am I going to teach the word to you and it's going to hit you? Yes. And as I get to know you a little better, as some have learned, I might actually hit you. I mean, nicely, in love or whatever. But it's a shepherd. A shepherd has a crook. He's kind and he's wonderful, but every now and then he takes it out and goes whack. But it's important for us to understand that we don't want to allow that world, that stuff to crawl into our life. Let it in, because it will cause destruction. And I'm sure Lot would have never thought that he would be where he is now. In a cave with his daughters, horrified, lost everything. Lost everything that he was looking for. Everything that he was working for, it's all gone. And now he looks at his daughters and he just is like, oh my goodness, what has happened? What has happened? I can imagine just the upset. And so then now we leave a Lot story. Now we head over to Abraham again. It says, and Abraham journeyed from there to the south and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and stayed in Gerar. And possibly after seeing the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and seeing the smoke coming up, he decided, I just want to make a little bit of distance between me and there. I just want to move a little bit. Maybe you can imagine, maybe there's ash falling in the camp, and you know what it is like here in the summer when we have those fires, right? And the air is really thick, and he's kind of going, I think I just would like to make some distance between me and Sodom and Gomorrah. And he begins to head south. He begins to look for a change of scenery. But he heads again in the wrong direction. Every time that Abraham moves south, he gets himself in trouble. He should learn that. Don't go south. You can go north or stay where you are, but every time you end up going south, you get yourself in trouble. So verse 2, it says, now Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So as you begin reading chapter 20, you go, I think I've already read this. Didn't I read this in chapter 12? I'm pretty sure I've already gone over this. And you think, oh my goodness. Now here's the thing. He goes down to Gerar, which is in Egypt area. And he goes down there again and does the same thing. He goes and does the same thing. And the king goes and takes his wife. And you think, are you ever going to learn anything? Now this says something about Sarah, because she's 90 years old. And this king goes, I'll take her. And you think, what? No offense, but how old is this king? What is he thinking? Because he's taking Sarah and adding her to his harem. And now traditionally harem, guys would usually pick younger women. And they pick them and fill their harem. But here he's picked Sarah. But the one thing that's amazing is that Sarah, this is when we can look at it, has been rejuvenated because she may be pregnant now or just about to be pregnant. And the Lord is doing a work to prepare her body. So maybe possibly her skin is getting a little smoother and things like that. And she's looking a little younger. Maybe she's got a little bit of glow. And there's like, hey, all right. But so he takes Sarah in to his harem. And you think, oh, Abraham, you're such a knucklehead. It says, but God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, indeed, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife. Abimelech did nothing wrong by taking Sarah, as far as he knew. He was completely innocent. But it was wrong because he took another man's wife. And so here the Lord is going to deal with him and speak to his heart. But Abimelech had to come, so it said, but Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, will you slay a righteous nation also? Did he not say to me, she is my sister? And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocence of my hands, I have done this. Abimelech responds to the Lord, and he goes, I didn't know. I'm innocent. How can you do this to me? And he says here, how are you going to destroy a righteous nation also? This doesn't mean that the nation of Gerar in this area, Abimelech's kingdom, was a righteous nation after God. What he was saying is they were right in what he was doing. He didn't know. So you can destroy us for being innocent and not knowing? Come on. Like, oh my goodness. You can't blame us. And God said to him in a dream, yes, I know. I love this. Yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart. For I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. The Lord here is striking fear into Abimelech. He's introducing himself. He's like, I'm God. You're not. And this is what's going to happen. And he says, hey, I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything. He goes, I know you didn't do anything because I didn't let you do anything. But I'm just letting you know who I am and how powerful I am. I'm letting you know. He's striking the fear of God into Abimelech. He's letting him know. He says, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Abraham's going to say he feared, for this nation did not fear God. Well, they sure do now. After this encounter, I'm sure he's just like, yes, sir, whatever you say, God, I'm going to do what you say. I'm sure he'd be a little scared after that. God shows them they are wrong and lets them know that he knows that they're innocent and he kept them from doing anything worse. Now, therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not restore her, know that you shall surely die, you and all who are yours. Even though Abraham sinned and didn't trust God, God didn't abandon him. God still calls him a prophet here. He's like, he's my prophet, and yeah, he makes mistakes, but I want you to restore Sarah to him. And he's going to pray for you. He's going to pray for you. God showed his mercy and grace by protecting Sarah in Abraham's mess. Ladies, this is important for you. God protected Sarah in Abraham's mess. Now, I'm not admitting to anything here, but sometimes men, your husbands, can make bad decisions that you don't agree with or lead into a mess. But know that God will protect you through the mess if you're faithful. He's going to protect you. That's one part of submission that's kind of hard, because you just simply have to hold on and trust. And you look at your spouse and say, you are such a bonehead, but I'm going to just trust you and know that God will take care of it. And we'll get through this. And the Lord protected Sarah through this mess. So Abimelech, verse 8, rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their hearing, and the men were very much afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? How have I offended you that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done deeds to me that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you have in view that you have done this thing? Just like in chapter 12 here, God uses this pagan king to rebuke him. That's painful. It's painful enough when a brother or sister rebukes you, but it's really painful when an unbeliever rebukes you and says, should Christians behave that way? And you're like, God, no. Oh, that hurts. But here the Lord uses this pagan king to rebuke him. And he says, why have you done this to us? Why have you done this to me? I haven't done anything to you. What did you expect to gain from this? Like, I don't understand. Why don't you just tell the truth? And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on the account of my wife. Oftentimes we get ourselves in a mess because we figure God can't go beyond what we can see. We think, oh, I got to take care of this one. I got to make this happen. God can't go beyond what I can see. I don't see any possible way this could work. So I'm going to take this into my own hands. Abraham went into this in the same way he did before, where he didn't trust that God would take care of him. Now, last time he didn't trust God would take care of him if he stayed in the land and not go down to Egypt because of the famine. This time he goes down there and doesn't trust God that he will just take care of him while he's in Egypt. He thinks, oh no, okay, here's the plan. We got to do the same thing. You tell anybody that you're my sister, and I'll tell them you're my sister, and we'll be good. Oh yeah, that's good. Just so that they won't kill me. Now I know some wives are going, we'd probably just say, no, he's my husband. Oh well, I was being truthful. Now I'm free. That's bad. If you're thinking like that, we'll talk afterwards. But oftentimes we try to take things into our own hands. We must trust the Lord in the big things and in the little things. especially in the things that we can't figure out. We have no idea. Because we all do that, right? We sit there and we analyze and go over the situation. How can I fix this? What is my options? How can I do this? What can I squeeze through? What can we do? And God's just sitting there going, are we done yet? Are we ready to let me? No? Okay, I'll wait. You know, okay. And we often make a big mess, and we finally go to the Lord, and the Lord goes, okay, are we ready now to do it my way? Good, okay. This is really easy. And we get up the next morning, and the problem solved. And that's probably one of the most, I think, painful things. Abraham's problem was that he didn't fear God enough to realize that God would intervene and protect him. He was worried that the pagan nation didn't fear God, and so that he wouldn't be protected. Instead, he should have feared and reverenced God and realized that God is powerful and he has made a covenant with him and he will not break his covenant, and he can trust in him. Verse 12, it says, but indeed, she is truly my sister. She is a daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. Abraham throws in here a little explanation, or as I see it, an excuse. Isn't it amazing how we always try to justify our sin? Yeah, but you don't understand. I did it because of this or that. Oh, I got this thing. Here it's quite entertaining. It says, but indeed, she truly is my sister. She is the daughter of my father, but not of my mother. And she became my wife. You got to think, what are you saying, Abraham? She's my half-sister, and one day I woke up and I was married to her. I don't know what happened. I don't know how this worked out, but we got married. It's like, come on. She just became my wife. Hey, it was just a thing. I wasn't really thinking about the consequences. And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, this is your kindness that you should do for me in every place wherever we go. Say of me, he is my brother. Then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, and male and female servants and gave them to Abraham, and he restored Sarah, his wife, to him. This doesn't make any sense. This is confusing. Usually it's the person who apologized that brings that peace offering. But here it's the other way around. The king, Abimelech, brings a gift to Abraham. He gives a gift to Abraham after all the suffering that he's caused. And we're going to see that there was more suffering going on than was stated at the beginning of the chapter. So he gives him this gift, and you can almost see it as almost like heaping coals upon Abraham's head. I'm going to give you a present, even though you made my life miserable. It says here, and Abimelech said, see my land is before you, dwell where it pleases you. So he gives him all these gifts, gives him these servants and everything, and then he says, and hey, you know what? You can stay in my land. I'm not going to kick you out. And the land of Egypt was a beautiful land, very lush, and so he says, here, you can stay here too. Talk about another dig. He's not just going to boot him up. I think I would be like, get out, and I don't ever want to see you again. Then he gets a phone call, hey, was that Abraham? He did that 3 years back. You should have learned. And then it says in verse 16, then to Sarah he said, behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody. Thus she was rebuked. I like this. You can see the sassiness and the sarcasm in his voice. It's like, hey, Sarah, come here for a second. Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It's kind of like, your brother who's your husband. It's like, I give your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. And indeed, this vindicates you before all who are with you and before everybody. Thus she was rebuked. Now, this word rebuked can mean set free or set right. She's been set right. Things have been made right. And so she's been rebuked. It means that basically they're saying, hey, I never touched her. Everything's good. We're making things right. I've given them a gift and everything's good. Nothing happened. Everybody's good. Good. So Abimelech here gives a gift to Abraham and he lets him stay in the land. He lets him stay in the land. And that's the amazing part. He lets them stay there. So Abraham prayed to God and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female servants. Then they bore children, for the Lord had closed up all their wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So this shows us right here that there was something physical going on. There was a sickness, there was a disease that was going on that possibly caused them not to be able to have children. So it also tells us that they were there for a long time. It's not like they just showed up and 2 days later this all happened. They were there for a while before the Lord spoke to Abimelech, and they got sick. And so you can think that possibly the reason why Abimelech never touched Sarah is because he was sick, had some weird disease, and was just not in the mood. And so the Lord used that to protect Sarah. And so Sarah has been protected, and things have been set right. And now the Lord uses Abraham. Abraham prays for them, and the Lord heals Abimelech and the family, and they all bear children. So the Lord blesses Abimelech. So God sets everything right and blesses Abimelech and his family. You could read this and think, Abraham lied about Sarah, and they were caught, and then God blessed them? What is that about? That's about the mercy and grace of God. God's grace and mercy is amazing. God is working a plan of salvation, a plan of sanctification, a plan of building Abraham into a man of God. And he's using him step by step. And part of this plan of salvation is this plan of sanctification, is changing us into the image of Christ. And changing us into the image of Christ, part of that is building our character. And although Abraham was blessed by Abimelech, his character was greatly damaged. He learned a hard lesson. His character was damaged. And I bet you from then on, he changed the way he did things. He learned. He may not have learned the first time, but sure learned the second time. He sure learned it. His character was damaged, and also his testimony was damaged. How does he share now with this pagan king about the Lord when the Lord used this king to rebuke him? When Abraham wasn't listening to the Lord, but this king was. It really makes it hard for him to be able to share. Just as Lot's testimony was damaged and lost its strength by living too close to the world, Abraham's testimony is damaged. But just like Lot's poor example caused nothing but hurt and pain in his life, Abraham's sin here will cause hurt and embarrassment in the future. The saddest consequence is Isaac. The saddest consequence of this whole story is that Isaac, years later, is going to do the same thing. He's going to do the exact same thing. He's going to go to Egypt. He's going to get his wife to lie for him. And he's going to get himself in the same trouble. Here's the trick. Is Isaac born yet? No. Isaac should have probably never heard this story, or at least been told, don't ever do this, please. But it's passed on. His folly is passed on, and it's sad. Our sin and our bad character affects those around us. It damages our faith, our character, and our testimony when we don't trust God and allow him to take care of us. We need to be those who are standing upon the truth of the word and standing upon the things of God, even when we have no idea what's going on around us. When things seem hopeless and the struggle just seems overwhelming, we need to say, I'm just going to trust in you. We often, our natural response, our fleshly response, is to trust the flesh and try to do it in our own power. Where we go and try to make things right or take care of things in our own power, and we usually end up in a bit of a mess or a big mess. And we end up with those consequences for the mess. And Abraham's going to pay. Those consequences are still going to be there. They're going to drag on and be throughout his life. 1 Corinthians 16, verse 13 says, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong. This is what we need to do. This is what Abraham should have done. He should have stand fast and said, I'm going to trust you, Lord. You took care of me. You protected me. I didn't end up in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. You protected Lot. You took him out. Lord, I trust you. If I go down to Egypt now, I know that you will take care of us. Even though everyone around is saying, Abraham, if they see Sarah, she's gone and they're going to kill you. You got to, you got to be careful. You just say, you know what? I'm just going to trust the Lord and he's going to take care of things. He's going to take care of it. 1 Corinthians 16 verse 13 again says, watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong. Let all you do be done with love. We need to do everything we can in love. Was it loving for him to lie to Abimelech? No. He hurt Abimelech very badly. He hurt his family badly. He damaged his character and his testimony. All throughout the scriptures we are told to watch, to stand fast, to hold on, to stand strong. We're not to blindly walk through this life being tossed to and fro by the world, but we are to stand fast and hold on and keep watch. To live our lives according to righteousness, not in legalism, but in the freedom to live and follow after the Lord. To live right lives, lives of integrity, and to stand strong. God has great things for us if we simply trust him. The road may be tough, may be bumpy, and it may be long, but God will give you the strength to walk each step if we can continue to just trust in him. This is the lesson we're going to see that Abraham's learning. From this time forward, the first thing Abraham does in the morning, and we're going to see that next week, is he goes before the Lord. He starts to realize, I need to be before the Lord first. Before I do anything, I need to know from him. I need to be strengthened in him. Ephesians 6:13 says, therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. It's important that we stand upon the Lord. We stand upon him, that we take upon all that he has for us, the armor of God. We put it on and we stand before him. And we say, Lord, I'm ready. I'm not going to go do my thing because my thing makes a mess. Where do you have me going? What are you going to do? And I'm trusting that in the things that I do, whether it's work or family or travel or whatever it might be, I know that you're going to take care of me and you're going to guide me. And I'm not going to listen to the world and allow them to sway me. Get that special deal. Do that, sneaky business deal, whatever it might be. I'm just going to trust you and be honest and stand in the integrity that you've given me. Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you so much for your truth. We thank you so much for your word. Lord, I pray that we would learn like Abraham to walk by faith and not by sight, not by our own ideas, not by the flesh, but by faith in you and by your Spirit. Lord, that we would continue to grow in you and be made stronger, that we would just trust you each day and be built up in you, Lord, in amazing ways, Lord God. I pray, Father, that you'd be working in each and everyone's lives this morning, that you would change us, that you'd be working, Lord God, refreshing and just building us up, Lord. We thank you in Jesus' precious name. Amen.